Her hand shook as she sent the text. He broke my arm. Mom, please help, but it landed in the wrong inbox. And the man who answered wasn't her mother at all. When the Mafia boss replied, I'm on my way, the entire night detonated because the stranger who kicked down her door wasn't coming to rescue her. He was coming to claim her. But what he finds on the other side of that bathroom door changes everything. If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. The fracture in Lillian's arm screamed louder than she could as she pressed her spine against the cold bathroom tiles, her functioning hand white-knuckled around her phone. Crimson streaked down from her temple, mixing with tears that turned everything into watercolor smears. Beyond the locked door, Caleb's boots scraped across the hardwood pavement. Deliberate, the sound of a hunter who knew his prey had nowhere left to run. Baby, I know you're scared. His voice dripped honey and venom in equal measure. Just open up. We'll fix this. We always do. They'd never fixed anything. He'd just convinced her the breaking was her fault. But tonight, staring at the unnatural angle of her forearm, Lillian knew there was no fixing this. The bone had snapped clean. She'd heard it crack beneath his grip when she'd mentioned leaving. Every breath dragged razor blades through her chest where he'd shoved her into the sink. She needed help. She needed her mother. Through vision swimming with shock and pain, she fumbled to her contacts, left thumb shaking as it hunted for Mom. Each tap sent lightning up her shattered arm. The letters blurred together, but she forced the message through. Mom, please. He broke my arm. I'm scared. He won't let me leave. Send. The doorknob rattled violently. Lillian, don't be dramatic. Open. This. Door. Her phone vibrated against her palm. Thank God. Except, who is this? Ice flooded her veins. No. She stared at the message thread, at a number she'd never seen before. In her terror, through tear-blurred vision and swelling, she'd hit the wrong digit. Before she could process the catastrophe, another message arrived. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm done asking nicely. Caleb's voice dropped to something darker, something honest. I'm going to count to 3, and then this door comes down. And when it does, Lillian, when it does, you'll understand what happens when you disrespect me. Her thumb flew across the screen, desperation overriding confusion about who this stranger was. Locked in bathroom. 414 Oak Street. Apt 6C. Don't call cops. He's connected. He'll make it worse. It wasn't a lie. Caleb had repeated it so many times his cousin knew people. Dangerous people. People who made problems disappear. The police couldn't help her. No one could. 1. 3 dots appeared on her screen. Someone was typing. 2. The response appeared. I'm on my way. Not, I'm calling someone. Not, I'm sending help. I'm on my way. 3. The bathroom door exploded inward with a crack that made Lillian scream, splinters raining across the tile. Caleb filled the doorway, chest heaving, eyes wild with rage and righteousness. He'd teach her. He'd make sure she never. Heavy footsteps thundered through the apartment. Not from the hallway, from inside. Someone else was here. Multiple someones. Caleb's head whipped toward the bedroom. What the? A figure stepped into view, and every molecule of oxygen seemed to evacuate the apartment. The man wore a black suit that probably cost more than Lillian's car, stretched across shoulders built for violence. Tattoos crawled up his neck from beneath his collar, dark, intricate, the kind that told stories written in blood. His slicked-back blonde hair caught the light, but his eyes cold, pale, merciless, fixed on Caleb like a predator finally cornering dinner. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute certainty of a man who'd never been told no in his life. Touch her again, and I'll rip your spine out through your throat. Caleb opened his mouth whether to threaten, negotiate, or beg. Lillian would never know because the tattooed man moved. One moment he stood in the doorway. The next, Caleb was on the floor, choking, the stranger's hand wrapped around his throat like a vice. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just brutal, efficient ending. Who? Lillian gasped, her broken arm cradled against her chest. The man's eyes shifted to her, and something in that glacial stare softened microscopically. But enough. You texted me, he said simply, as if that explained everything, as if crossing the city to destroy a stranger made perfect sense. Caleb wheezed beneath him, face purpling. Please, Lillian whispered, though she didn't know if she was begging him to stop or to finish it. The stranger seemed to hear what she couldn't say. He released Caleb, who crumpled, gasping, and stood, adjusting his cufflinks with blood-stained fingers. 2 more men in suits appeared behind him, their presence filling the small apartment with silent menace. "Get her to Dr. Santos," the tattooed man ordered without looking at his companions. Then, to Lillian, in a tone that somehow managed to be both command and comfort, "You're safe now, I promise." She should have been terrified. This man radiated danger like heat from a furnace, but as he stepped forward and carefully, impossibly carefully for hands that size, lifted her from the floor, supporting her broken arm with practiced gentleness, Lillian felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Safety. "Who are you?" she managed, as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, shock and pain finally claiming their due. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was his answer, delivered with the weight of absolute truth. "Fernando Bonaparte. And you just became the most protected woman in this city." Lillian woke to leather and cologne. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in the back of a vehicle that smelled like money, real money, the kind that didn't come from paychecks. Soft leather cradled her body. The hum of a powerful engine vibrated beneath her. And beside her sat the tattooed man from her apartment, Fernando, watching her with those unsettling pale eyes. "Don't move too quickly," he said, his voice quieter now, almost gentle. "Your arm is stabilized, but it needs proper medical attention." Lillian's gaze dropped to her right arm, now secured in a makeshift sling fashioned from what looked like an expensive silk tie. The pain had dulled to a throbbing ache. Someone had given her something. When? Where? Her throat felt raw. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere safe. A doctor I trust." Fernando leaned forward slightly, and she noticed the blood spatters on his white shirt cuff, barely visible against the fabric. "Caleb's blood. Then somewhere you can rest without fear." Fear. The word triggered something, and suddenly she was back in that bathroom, Caleb's fist connecting with her face, her arm snapping, the terror that this time he really would kill her. "Breathe," Fernando commanded, and his hand tattooed, strong, capable of terrible violence, settled gently on her shoulder. "You're not there anymore. He can't touch you. How did you—" Lillian's eyes filled with tears. She didn't have permission to shed yet. "How did you get there so fast?" "I just texted. I was close." His jaw tightened. "And I don't waste time when someone asks for help." The car pulled into an underground garage, pristine and empty, except for vehicles that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. A man in a white coat waited by a private elevator, medical bag in hand. "Dr. Santos," Fernando said as he helped Lillian from the car with surprising care. "He'll take care of you." The next hour passed in a blur of examinations, X-rays from a portable machine, and the doctor's gentle hand setting her arm properly, while Fernando stood guard by the door like a sentinel. Santos asked no questions about how she'd been injured, didn't suggest calling authorities. He simply worked with the efficiency of someone who'd treated similar injuries before and knew better than to involve police. "Clean break," Santos finally announced, wrapping her arm in a proper cast. 6 weeks, maybe 8. The ribs are bruised, not broken. You were lucky." "Miss Jones." "Lucky." She almost laughed at that. "Thank you, doctor," Fernando said, and it was clearly a dismissal. Santos packed his equipment and disappeared into the elevator without another word. Alone now, alone with Fernando and the 2 silent men who'd accompanied him, Lillian finally found her voice. "Caleb said he was connected. He always said if I went to the police, his people would—" She stopped, looking at this man who'd destroyed Caleb with casual brutality. "Is it true?" Fernando's expression shifted into something almost resembling amusement. "Caleb worked at a car dealership. His cousin is a low-level dealer who occasionally pays protection money to people who pay me." He stepped closer, and she should have flinched but didn't. "He's nobody, Lillian. He lied to keep you trapped." The words hit harder than Caleb's fists ever had. 2 years. 2 years of believing she couldn't escape, couldn't run, couldn't tell anyone because Caleb's connections would find her, and it was all a lie. "He's nothing," Fernando continued, his voice taking on an edge of cold steel. "And he will never touch you again. That's not a promise. It's a fact." "Why?" The question burst from her before she could stop it. "You don't know me. I texted a wrong number. Why did you come? Why are you doing this?" Fernando was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those ice-chip eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she couldn't quite understand. "Because you asked for help," he said simply. "And because I know what it's like when no one comes." Before she could process that revelation, He gestured toward the elevator. Come. You need rest, food, and safety. I have a place prepared. I can't just... Lillian started, but her protest died as exhaustion crashed over her. Where would she go? Back to that apartment where Caleb's blood still stained the floor? To her mother's, putting her in danger? She had nothing, no one, nowhere. Fernando seemed to read her thoughts. You can leave whenever you want, but tonight, let me give you what he never did, a choice. A choice. When had she last had one of those? She nodded, too tired and broken to argue, and let Fernando guide her into the elevator. As the doors closed and they ascended, she caught her reflection in the polished, steel, bruised, battered, arm in a cast, but somehow still breathing. And beside her reflection stood Fernando Bonaparte, the monster who'd saved her from another monster. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in 2 years, Lillian Jones felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope. The penthouse was a cage made of glass and luxury. Lillian stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights blur through her exhaustion. Behind her, the space stretched out in shades of black, gray, and chrome, modern, expensive, and utterly foreign. Everything here probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. She was a waitress in a world built for kings. The bedroom is through there. Fernando's voice came from behind her, carefully measured. Bathroom is stocked with anything you might need. Kitchen, too, though I'll have meals brought up until you're comfortable. Comfortable. As if she could ever be comfortable here. Lillian turned to face him, cradling her casted arm. In the soft lighting, Fernando looked different than he had in her apartment. Less like an avenging angel, more like a man. A dangerous man, yes, but still just a man. Why are you doing this? She asked again, because his earlier answer hadn't been enough. Men like you don't just save random women. There has to be something you want. Something flickered in his pale eyes. Hurt? Anger? It passed too quickly to identify. Men like me, he repeated, almost to himself. Then his gaze sharpened on her. What do you think men like me are, Lillian? She should have been intimidated, but pain and exhaustion had burned through her fear. Dangerous, powerful, the kind who don't do anything without a reason. You're right. He moved closer, and she forced herself not to step back. I am dangerous, I am powerful, and I don't do anything without a reason. He stopped just outside her personal space, close enough that she could see the intricate details of the tattoos on his neck, a dragon's scales, she realized, breathing fire up toward his jaw. My reason is that you asked for help, and I don't ignore that. Ever. But no conditions, Lillian. No debt. No expectations. His voice softened slightly. Just safety. For as long as you need it. She wanted to believe him. God, how desperately she wanted to believe someone could offer kindness without strings attached. But Caleb had taught her that everything came with a price. As if reading her thoughts, Fernando added, I know you don't trust me. You shouldn't. Not yet. But I'm asking you to trust this. He gestured to the penthouse around them. Trust that tonight, you can sleep without fear. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Tomorrow felt impossibly far away. Okay, she whispered, because what else could she say? Fernando nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. I'll be in the next unit if you need anything. Victor is stationed outside your door. He won't come in, but he'll respond if you call. Victor? One of my men. He looks scary, but he's harmless to anyone under my protection. A ghost of something that might have been a smile touched Fernando's lips. Well, harmless to you anyway. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut softly behind him, leaving Lillian alone in a stranger's penthouse with nothing but the clothes on her back and a broken arm. She should have cried, should have collapsed, but instead, she walked to the bedroom, found it decorated in the same expensive minimalism as the rest of the space, and sat carefully on the edge of a bed that probably cost more than her car. Her phone buzzed. Caleb's number. Her heart stopped. Then the message loaded. This is Fernando. I had your phone retrieved from the apartment. Caleb's number is now blocked. Your mother's real number is saved in your contacts. I suggest calling her tomorrow when you're rested. Sleep now. Tears finally came not from fear or pain, but from the simple kindness of someone thinking about her mother, about her needing her phone, about small details that meant someone actually cared. The nightmares came anyway. Lillian woke gasping. Caleb's hands around her throat, his voice promising this time would be the last time. Lillian. Fernando's voice cut through the darkness. You're safe. She jolted upright, heart hammering, and found Fernando sitting in a chair by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, still in his suit, though his jacket was off and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing more tattoos that snaked down his forearms. "How long have you been there?" Her voice shook. "Since you started screaming." He didn't move from the chair, giving her space. "Victor called me. You don't remember, but you were calling for help." Shame burned through her. "I'm sorry, Don't." The command was soft but absolute. "Don't apologize for trauma. It's not weakness, Lillian. It's proof you survived." Something in her chest cracked open at those words. "Does it get better?" she asked, pulling her knees to her chest, careful of her casted arm. "The fear?" Fernando was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience. "Yes, but not because time passes. Because you choose to take your power back. And I promise you," his pale eyes found hers in the darkness, "you will never be hurt again. Not while I'm breathing." It should have sounded like possession. Instead, it sounded like a vow. And for the first time since that wrong number text, Lillian Jones began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd been saved by the right monster. 3 weeks passed in Fernando's glass tower, and Lillian discovered that safety felt like a cage made of silk. She healed physically, at least. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to nothing. Her ribs stopped aching with every breath. The cast on her arm became something she barely noticed. Dr. Santos visited twice weekly, pronouncing her recovery remarkable. But being remarkable wasn't enough anymore. "I need to work," Lillian announced one evening as Fernando arrived for his nightly check-in. A routine that had become as predictable as sunrise. "I can't just exist here." Fernando paused in the doorway, still in his suit though he'd loosened his tie. His pale eyes assessed her carefully. "You're still healing." "I'm going insane." She stood from the couch, meeting his gaze with newfound determination. "I appreciate everything you've done, God, Fernando. I owe you my life, but I can't be locked away like some fragile thing. I need purpose. I need to feel like myself again." Something shifted in his expression, respect, maybe, or understanding. He crossed the room and sat in the chair he'd occupied that first nightmare-filled night, gesturing for her to sit as well. "What did you do before?" he asked. "Before Caleb." The name still made her flinch, but less than before. "I waited tables. Nothing glamorous, but I was good at it. Made people smile. Remembered their orders. Handled the rush without breaking down." She looked at her casted arm. "I can still do that. Even like this." Fernando was quiet for a moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Then, "I own several restaurants. High-end establishments. The kind where a single meal costs what most people make in a week. I don't have experience with. I'm not offering you a serving position." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I need someone to manage my flagship location. The previous manager retired suddenly. You'd oversee staff, handle scheduling, manage inventory, deal with vendors. Think you can do that?" Lillian blinked. "You're offering me a management position? Fernando, you're smart, resilient, and you understand hospitality. The rest you can learn." His gaze held hers. "But I need to know you want this because it's what you need, not because you feel obligated." "I want it," she said immediately, feeling something flutter in her chest that felt dangerously close to hope. "I want to prove I'm more than what he made me believe I was." Fernando's expression softened microscopically. "You already are. But if you need to prove it to yourself, then we start Monday." Relief and terror warred in her stomach. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Victor will drive you there and back. Non-negotiable." When she started to protest, he held up a hand. "I have enemies, Lillian. People who would love to find a weakness in my armor. Right now, whether you want to be or not, you're associated with me. That makes you a target." The words sent ice down her spine. "What kind of enemies?" "The kind that don't play fair." Fernando stood, moving to the window. Against the city lights, his profile was sharp and dangerous. "There are people who would use you to hurt me. Rival families, ambitious underlings, law enforcement looking for leverage. You need to understand what you're walking into." Lillian joined him at the window, studying his reflection in the glass. "You're telling me this why? To scare me back into hiding?" "I'm telling you because you deserve the truth." He turned to face her directly. "You asked me who I am. I'm Fernando Bonaparte. I own this city's underworld, the clubs, the protection rackets, the networks that keep certain businesses running and certain politicians in office. I'm not a good man, Lillian, but I'm a man of my word." She should have been horrified. Should have demanded to leave, to run, to get as far from this dangerous world as possible. Instead, she found herself asking, "And your word is that I'm safe?" "My word is that anyone who touches you will regret being born." The casual certainty in his voice made it a promise, not a threat. "Victor isn't just a driver, he's your shadow. And if anything happens, anything at all, you call me. Understood?" Lillian nodded, something warm and unfamiliar spreading through her chest. No one had ever protected her like this. Not her father, who'd left when she was 6. Not her mother, who loved her but couldn't save her from Caleb. Certainly not Caleb himself, who'd promised protection while delivering pain. But Fernando, this dangerous, tattooed king of the underworld, meant every word. "Why me?" she asked softly. "I'm nobody special. Just a waitress who texted the wrong number." Fernando's hand lifted, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face. Instead, he caught himself, letting his hand fall. "You're not nobody, Lillian. You're the woman who asked for help when you needed it most. Who survived when most would have broken. Who's choosing to live instead of hide." His pale eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That's not nobody. That's extraordinary." Heat flooded her cheeks as she looked away, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his words. "Monday, then," she managed. "Monday," Fernando agreed. "But Lillian, one more thing." "Yes? You're not my employee. You're under my protection. There's a difference. Remember that." She would. God help her, she would. 2 months into her new life, Lillian discovered something she'd forgotten existed: joy. The restaurant Celestial, Fernando called it, was everything she'd imagined fine dining could be. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across white tablecloths. The kitchen hummed with precision and artistry. And somehow, impossibly, she was good at running it. Table 12 is complaining about the temperature of their wine, her assistant manager, Sophia, reported during the dinner rush. 3rd time this week. Lillian didn't hesitate. Comp their bottle, upgrade them to the reserve selection, and have chef personally explain the optimal serving temperature. Make them feel educated, not corrected. Sophia grinned. "You're scary good at this, you know that?" Maybe she was. Or maybe for the first time in years, someone had given her the chance to be good at something. She was reviewing inventory logs when Victor appeared in her office doorway, a mountain of a man with surprisingly gentle eyes. "Boss is here," he announced. Lillian's heart did something complicated in her chest. Fernando visited the restaurant twice weekly, always professional, always careful to maintain distance. But lately, the air between them had started to feel charged with something unspoken. She found him in the private dining room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up to reveal those mesmerizing tattoos. He'd been sampling the new menu, apparently, because several small plates sat before him. "Working dinner?" she asked, slipping into the chair across from him, making sure my investment is sound. But his eyes held warmth when they met hers. "How's the arm?" "Cast comes off next week." She flexed her fingers, still sometimes surprised by the lack of pain. "Dr. Santos says the break healed perfectly." "Good." Fernando pushed a plate toward her seared scallops with some sort of golden sauce. "Have you eaten today?" She hadn't. Again. "I was busy." "Lillian." His voice carried gentle reproach. "You can't take care of everyone else if you don't take care of yourself first." The words hit deeper than he probably intended. She picked up a fork, tasting the scallops. Butter, citrus, something earthy she couldn't identify. "Perfect." "It's good," she said softly. "You're good." Fernando leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unsettling intensity. "The staff adores you. Reservations are up 30% since you took over. You've turned this place into more than just a restaurant. You've made it feel alive." Pride bloomed warm in her chest. "I love it here. The work, the people, the challenge of it all. I wake up excited instead of terrified." "That's..." Her voice caught. "That's everything." Something flickered in Fernando's expression, satisfaction mixed with something softer. "You deserve that. Every day." The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither seemed ready to say. Then Fernando broke it, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Your first paycheck, plus a bonus for exceeding every metric I gave you." Lillian opened it and nearly dropped the check. "Fernando, this is too much. I can't." "It's exactly what you've earned." He stood, moving around the table. "And before you argue, consider this. You're managing a restaurant that generates 7 figures annually. Your salary reflects your value, not my charity." "But..." "Lillian..." He was close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. Let yourself have this. Success, security, a life you've built with your own hands. She looked up at him. This dangerous man who'd given her everything and asked for nothing in return. Why don't you ever ask for anything? From me, I mean. Fernando's jaw tightened. Because what I want, you're not ready to give. The admission hung in the air between them like a lit match near gasoline. What if I am? The words escaped before Lillian could stop them, brave and terrifying and true. Fernando's pale eyes darkened. Don't offer things you might regret. I'm not Caleb's victim anymore. She stood, closing the distance between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I'm not broken. I'm not fragile. I know exactly what I'm saying. Do you? His hand lifted to her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Do you know what it means to be mine, Lillian? The danger, the violence, the enemies who would use you to hurt me. You've had Victor shadow me for 2 months. I already know the danger. She leaned into his touch, her heart hammering. What I don't know is what happens if we keep pretending this, she gestured between them, isn't happening. Fernando's control cracked. She saw it in his eyes, felt it in the way his hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up toward his. If I kiss you, he said, voice rough, I won't be able to stop wanting you. And I don't share Lillian, ever. Good. She rose on her toes, closing the final distance. Because I don't either. Their lips met, and the world caught fire. Fernando kissed like he did everything else with complete certainty and devastating precision. His free hand found her waist, pulling her against him as he claimed her mouth with an intensity that made her knees weak. She tasted wine on his lips, felt the barely restrained power in his body, and understood with perfect clarity that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. She didn't want to. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Fernando rested his forehead against hers. You're mine now, he whispered. Say it. Yours, Lillian breathed. And you're mine. His smile was pure possession. Always. The first bouquet arrived on a Tuesday. Lillian found it on her desk at Celestial, 24 black roses arranged with pristine precision, no card attached. Beautiful and vaguely threatening in equal measure. Secret admirer? Sophia asked, peeking into the office. Something like that. But unease prickled at Lillian's neck as she studied the arrangement. Fernando sent flowers, sometimes always white peonies, her favorite, which she'd mentioned once in passing. Never black roses. She texted him a photo. Yours? His response came within seconds. No, don't touch them. I'm sending someone. 20 minutes later, Victor arrived with 2 additional men who swept her office like it was a crime scene. They bagged the flowers, checked for cameras, dusted for prints, all while Lillian watched, her earlier joy curdling into anxiety. It's a message, Victor said quietly, his usual gentle expression hardened into something dangerous. Boss needs to see you. Now. The drive to Fernando's headquarters, a sleek office building that fronted as a legitimate import-export business, felt longer than usual. Victor's tension bled into the car's atmosphere, and Lillian found herself gripping the door handle, her newly healed arm aching with phantom pain. Fernando met her in his private office, fury radiating from every line of his body despite his controlled exterior. He pulled her into his arms the moment the door closed, holding her like he needed to confirm she was real and whole. I'm fine, she murmured against his chest. It was just flowers. It wasn't just flowers. He pulled back, cupping her face with both hands. Black roses are a declaration. Someone knows you're important to me, and they're announcing their intent to use that against me. Fear crystallized in her stomach. Who? I have suspicions. Fernando's jaw clenched. The Kozlov family has been pushing into my territory for months. I've been pushing back. This would be their way of escalating. So what do? We do nothing. You stay protected while I handle this. At her mutinous expression, he softened slightly. Lillian, I need you to understand something. The people who sent those flowers aren't like Caleb. They're professionals. Cold, efficient, and they won't hesitate to hurt you if it serves their purpose. Then maybe I should leave. The words tasted like ash. Go somewhere they can't find me. Keep you safe by... No. The word was absolute. Fernando's grip tightened on her face. You think I'd let you run? Let you go back to being afraid, looking over your shoulder, wondering if you're putting everyone around you in danger? His pale eyes blazed. You're mine, Lillian. That means you stay where I can protect you. Always. But if I'm making you vulnerable, you're making me stronger. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips desperate and claiming. Before you, I was untouchable, because I had nothing to lose. Now I have everything, and that makes me more dangerous than I've ever been, because I will burn this city to ash before I let anyone take you from me." The ferocity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it ignited something primal in her chest, not fear, but fierce determination. "Then teach me," she said. "Self-defense, how to spot threats, whatever I need to know. I won't be helpless again, Fernando. Not for you, not for anyone." Pride flickered in his expression, mixing with reluctance. "It's not a game, Lillian. Real violence isn't like the movies. It's ugly and brutal and I know." She thought of Caleb's fists, the sound of her own arm breaking. "I've lived ugly and brutal. The difference is, now I want to fight back." Fernando studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his gaze, respect, desire, and a dark satisfaction that she wasn't cowering. "All right, but we do this my way. Victor will train you. Basic self-defense, situational awareness, how to use your environment as a weapon. And you? I'll be handling the Kozlovs." His smile was all predator. "Time to remind this city why my name is spoken in whispers." That night, Fernando broke his own rules. Instead of leaving her at the penthouse with Victor stationed outside, he brought her to his private residence, a sprawling home in the hills that somehow managed to feel more intimate than the glass tower downtown. "I need you close," he admitted, pouring them both wine in a living room that overlooked the city lights. "Just for tonight? Tomorrow we go back to protocol. But tonight you're scared," Lillian finished softly, joining him by the windows. Terrified. The admission clearly cost him. "I don't fear death, Lillian. I've made peace with violence, but the thought of someone hurting you, using you to break me." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "It's the only thing in this world that could destroy me." She set down her wine and turned to face him fully, reaching up to trace the dragon tattoo that wound up his neck. "Then we'll destroy them first." Fernando caught her hand, pressing it against his chest where his heart hammered. "You're not a victim anymore." "No," she agreed. "I'm a queen learning to rule beside her king." His kiss was answer and promise and possession all at once. When he lifted her into his arms and carried her toward his bedroom, Lillian felt no fear, only the bone-deep certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. Let the Kozlovs send their messages. She was done running. The attack came 3 weeks later, on a night when Lillian's guard was finally down. She'd stayed late at Celestial, reviewing applications for a new sous chef position. Victor waited outside as always, but she'd insisted he grab coffee from across the street, her small rebellion against the constant shadow, even though she knew Fernando would disapprove. 5 minutes. Victor was gone for 5 minutes. That's all it took. Lillian was locking her office when she heard the footsteps, too many, too coordinated. She spun toward the emergency exit, hand diving for her phone, but they were already there. 3 men in dark clothing, faces obscured. Professional, efficient, exactly what Fernando had warned her about. "Don't scream," one said in accented English Russian. She realized with ice-cold clarity. "Kozlov, come quietly, nobody else gets hurt." Lillian's training kicked in, Victor's voice in her head. "When you can't win, survive. Buy time. Make them work for it." She screamed anyway. Her hand found the desk lamp, swinging it hard into the nearest man's face. Glass shattered. He staggered, cursing in Russian. She ran, not toward the exit, but deeper into the restaurant, toward the kitchen where the knives were, where someone might still be. A hand caught her hair, yanking her backward. Pain exploded across her scalp as she hit the ground. Before she could fight, something sharp pricked her neck. The world went sideways. "Fernando," she thought desperately as darkness swallowed her. "I'm sorry." Lillian woke to the smell of mildew and oil. Her head pounded, vision swimming as she tried to focus. Warehouse. She was in a warehouse, hands zip-tied to a metal chair, ankles bound. Blood crusted on her temple where she'd hit the floor. "She's awake." A voice from the shadows, the same Russian accent. "Tell Kozlov." 3 figures emerged from the darkness. The men from the restaurant, plus someone new, older, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit that looked obscene in this decrepit space. "Miss Jones." His smile didn't reach his cold eyes. "Forgive the accommodation. We won't be here long." "Go to hell," Lillian spat, testing her restraints. Tight, but not impossible. Victor had taught her about zip ties, how they had a breaking point if you knew the angle. Silverhair laughed. "Spirit, I see why Bonaparte is so taken with you. Tell me, does he know you're just a waitress playing dress-up in his world? Does your mother know you kidnap women to compensate for your inadequacies?" She needed them angry. Distracted. Angry people made mistakes. His smile vanished. You think you're clever? You're a message, little girl. Nothing more. When Bonaparte tears this city apart looking for you, when he makes mistakes because his heart is bleeding, that's when we strike. You're the crack in his armor. He'll kill you. Lillian's voice was steady despite her hammering heart. All of you. Slowly. Perhaps. Silverhair gestured to one of his men. But first, we make sure he knows what he's lost. Take a photo. Send it to Bonaparte with our demands. One of the men approached with a phone, and Lillian saw her chance. She raised her bound arms, slamming them down hard against her knee exactly as Victor taught her. The zip tie snapped. She moved on pure instinct and adrenaline. Her freed hands grabbed the man's wrist, twisting the phone from his grip. She drove her elbow into his throat, felt him choke and stumble. The phone clattered away, but she was already moving, launching herself at the second guard. Her kick connected with his knee. Victor's voice again. Joints break easy and he screamed, collapsing. Silverhair drew a gun. Time crystallized. Lillian dove behind a stack of crates as the shot echoed through the warehouse, wood exploding inches from her head. Her ankles were still bound, limiting her movement. She fumbled with the restraints, fingers shaking, knowing she had seconds before. The warehouse door didn't open. It exploded. Metal shrieked, hinges tearing free as the entire doorframe collapsed inward. Through the dust and chaos, a figure stepped through, and Lillian's heart seized. Fernando. He looked like death incarnate. His suit was torn, face bruised and bloodied, knuckles split and raw. But his eyes, God, his eyes burned with such concentrated rage that even Silverhair took a step back. You touched her, Fernando said, voice so cold it could freeze fire. You put your hands on what's mine. Behind him, Victor appeared with a dozen men, all armed, all moving with lethal precision. But Fernando raised a hand, stopping them. No, he said. This one's mine. Silverhair raised his gun, but Fernando was already moving faster than someone that size should move. The gun fired wild. Fernando's fist connected with the man's jaw, a crack that echoed through the warehouse. The older man crumpled. Then Fernando was at Lillian's side, hands gentle as they freed her ankles, eyes scanning her for injuries with desperate intensity. Did they hurt you? His voice cracked on the words. Lillian, tell me. I fought. She threw her arms around his neck, feeling him shake against her. I didn't give up. I fought back. Fernando buried his face in her hair, and she felt wetness on her temple that wasn't blood. I tore the city apart looking for you. Every contact, every favor, every threat, I would have burned it all down. I know. She pulled back to cup his battered face. I know, but I'm here. We're okay. His kiss was desperate, claiming, a promise written in touch. Take me home, Lillian whispered against his lips. Always, Fernando swore. Always. The warehouse became a tomb. Fernando's men moved through the space with surgical precision, securing the Kozlov soldiers who'd survived the initial assault. Silver-haired Dmitri Kozlov, Lillian would later learn, groaned on the concrete floor, jaw shattered, choking on his own blood and broken teeth. But Fernando's attention never wavered from Lillian. Can you walk? His hands roamed over her arms, her face, cataloging every bruise and cut with barely controlled fury. Did they drug you? Your pupils are. I'm okay. She caught his hands, stilling them. Fernando, I'm okay. They injected me with something at the restaurant, but it's wearing off. I can walk. Relief and rage warred in his expression. He pulled her against his chest, and she felt the violent tremor running through his body, adrenaline, fear, the aftermath of whatever hell he'd unleashed to find her. I got the photo, he said into her hair, voice rough. You, tied to that chair, blood on your face. I've killed men for less. Lillian, I've destroyed entire families for disrespect, but seeing you like that... His arms tightened until she could barely breathe. I would have ended the world, but you found me first. She pulled back to meet his eyes, seeing the depth of his terror reflected there. You came. Always. He kissed her forehead, her temple, her lips gentle despite the violence still singing through his veins. Every time. Forever. Behind them, Dmitri Kozlov coughed wetly, trying to speak through his ruined mouth. Fernando's expression shifted, the gentleness evaporating into something arctic and merciless. Victor, he called, not looking away from Lillian. Take her to the car. Now. No. Lillian grabbed his jacket. Whatever you're going to do. You don't need to see this. Fernando's voice was soft but absolute. This part of me, This darkness, you don't need it in your head. I know what you are. She held his gaze, unflinching. I've always known. You think I'm naive enough to believe you built an empire without blood? Without violence? She glanced at Dmitri, felt no pity for the man who'd ordered her kidnapping. Do what you need to do. I'm not leaving you. Something flickered in Fernando's eyes, surprise, pride, desire, and a dark satisfaction that she wasn't turning away. You might have nightmares. I already have nightmares. Lillian touched the dragon tattoo on his neck, feeling his pulse hammer beneath her fingers. But I wake up with you beside me, and they don't matter anymore. Fernando studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. He turned to Dmitri, crouching beside the broken man with casual menace. You made a mistake, Fernando said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. You thought she was my weakness. But you failed to understand something fundamental about me, Dmitri. He grabbed the older man's silver hair, forcing him to meet his eyes. I don't have weaknesses. I have priorities. And anyone who threatens my priorities doesn't just die, they serve as lessons. Dmitri tried to speak, blood bubbling from his lips. No, don't talk. Listen. Fernando's smile was terrible. Your family is finished in this city. Your assets are being seized as we speak. Your soldiers will work for me or they'll disappear. Your name will become a cautionary tale. The man who touched Fernando Bonaparte's woman and learned what true power looks like. He released Dimitri's hair, letting his head crack against the concrete. Then Fernando stood, adjusted his torn suit, and turned to Victor. Make it clean, he ordered. No torture, no games, a bullet and then erasure. I want the Kozlov name to vanish from this city by sunrise. Copy that, boss. Victor gestured to his team, who moved with efficient brutality. Fernando returned to Lillian, and she saw the shift in him, the monster receding, the man emerging. He took her hand gently, carefully, as if she were made of glass despite knowing she'd just watched him order an execution without flinching. Let's go home, he said quietly. Dr. Santos is waiting. As they walked toward the exit, stepping over debris and defeated enemies, Lillian felt something settle in her chest. Not fear, not horror, but understanding. This was Fernando's world. Violence and power, loyalty and retribution. And she'd just chosen to stand in it beside him, eyes open, heart willing. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. The drive to Fernando's hilltop home passed in silence. Victor drove while Fernando held Lillian in the back seat, his arms wrapped around her like he couldn't bear to let go. She felt him breathing against her hair, measured, controlled, but too fast, still coming down from the fear and fury. I should have been there, Victor said quietly from the front seat, his usual gentle demeanor cracked with guilt. I left for 5 minutes. 5 fucking minutes. And they— It's not your fault, Lillian interrupted. I insisted you go. If anyone's to blame, no one is to blame except the men who took you. Fernando's voice carried absolute certainty. And they've paid for it. The finality in his tone ended the conversation. Dr. Santos met them at the door, medical bag already in hand. He examined Lillian in Fernando's bedroom, the same room where they'd made love just nights ago, now transformed into a makeshift clinic. Mild concussion, Santos announced after checking her pupils and reflexes. The drug in her system is mostly metabolized, probably midazolam or something similar. She'll be dizzy for a few hours, might have headaches. The cuts are superficial. He paused, meeting Fernando's eyes. She's lucky. And strong. Most people would still be unconscious after that dosage. She's extraordinary, Fernando corrected, and the pride in his voice made Lillian's throat tight. After Santos left with instructions for rest and hydration, Fernando drew a bath, something Lillian had never expected from this dangerous man. He helped her undress with careful hands, supporting her when dizziness made her sway, and settled her into water that smelled of lavender and eucalyptus. You don't have to do this, she murmured, as he knelt beside the tub, gently washing blood from her hair. I need to. His jaw was tight, eyes focused on his task with almost desperate intensity. I need to take care of you, to know you're real and whole and safe. Please, Lillian, let me have this. So she did. She let him wash away the evidence of violence, let him dry her with soft towels, let him dress her in one of his shirts that swallowed her frame, and when he finally climbed into bed beside her, pulling her against his chest, she felt the tremor in his hands. I've never been afraid before, Fernando admitted into the darkness. Not of death, not of loss, not of anything, but today, when I got that photo, his voice cracked. I understood what real fear feels like, the possibility of a world without you in it. Lillian turned in his arms, cupping his face. I'm here. I fought like you taught me. I bought time until you could find me. We survived this together. You were incredible. He kissed her palms, her wrists, working his way up her arms with desperate reverence. Victor said you broke your own restraints. Took down 2 of my men before Dimitri drew on you. You're not a victim anymore, Lillian. You're a warrior. I'm your warrior, she corrected, then kissed him slow and deep and claiming, yours, Fernando. In this world, in your darkness, in everything. I choose this. I choose you. His kiss back was answer and vow and desperate need. When he made love to her that night, it was with a gentleness that belied his reputation, a tenderness that spoke of how close he'd come to losing her, and afterward, wrapped in his arms with his heart beating steady beneath her ear, Lillian finally let herself cry, not from fear or pain, but from the overwhelming relief of being home. I've got you, Fernando whispered, holding her as she shook. Always, mi amor. Always. Dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Fernando stood at the window, watching the sunrise, while Lillian slept in his bed, safe, whole, his. Behind him, his phone buzzed with confirmations. The Kozlov family was finished, their empire absorbed into his own. Dimitri's body would never be found. The warehouse had been scrubbed clean, but none of it mattered as much as the woman breathing softly behind him. She'd stood in his darkness and hadn't flinched, had watched him order death and held his hand anyway, had chosen his world, his violence, his love, knowing exactly what all of it meant. Fernando returned to the bed, sliding in beside her. She stirred, instinctively curling into him, and he wrapped his arms around her with fierce possession. Mine, he whispered against her hair. In her sleep, Lillian smiled. Yours, she murmured back, still dreaming. And Fernando Bonaparte, the city's most feared king, finally allowed himself to believe it. 6 weeks after the kidnapping, Lillian stood in Celestial's kitchen watching her staff work with the precision of a symphony orchestra. The restaurant had become more than a job, it was her kingdom, her proof that she'd become someone new, someone stronger. The headlines had called the Kozlov family's collapse a corporate restructuring. Those in the know understood it was a massacre, swift and total. And Lillian had stood at the center of it, the woman who'd sparked a war and survived. Table 6 wants to meet the manager, Sophia announced, appearing at her elbow with barely concealed excitement. They've been here 3 times this month, said they've never experienced service like this. Lillian smiled, straightening her jacket designer now, tailored to fit, purchased with money she'd earned through her own competence. Then let's not disappoint them. She moved through the dining room with confidence that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. The woman who'd cowered in a bathroom with a broken arm felt like a stranger now, someone from another lifetime. But she hadn't forgotten her. She'd integrated her, learned from her, and become something fiercer because of her. After charming table 6, a wealthy couple celebrating their anniversary, Lillian returned to her office to find Victor waiting, his massive frame somehow folded into her guest chair. Boss wants to see you, he said, though his usual gruffness was softened by something that looked almost like pride. Said to tell you it's not urgent, but he'd appreciate you coming by when you have time. Appreciate? Lillian raised an eyebrow. Fernando doesn't ask. He commands. Victor's rare smile appeared. Yeah, well, you changed that. He's different now, softer around the edges, even if he'd gut anyone who said so. He stood, heading for the door, then paused. You're good for him, Miss Jones. Never thought I'd see the day when Fernando Bonaparte would smile like he means it. After Victor left, Lillian found herself staring at the photo on her desk, her and Fernando at a charity gala last week, his arm around her waist, both of them dressed in black tie elegance. But what struck her wasn't their clothes or the opulent setting, it was their faces. Fernando's rare, genuine smile, her own expression, confident and radiant, a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to claim it. She'd come so far from that desperate text to the wrong number. Fernando's office occupied the top floor of his legitimate business headquarters, all glass and steel and understated power. His assistant waved Lillian through without hesitation. Everyone knew she had permanent clearance. She found Fernando at his desk, reviewing contracts, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. The late afternoon sun caught the tattoos on his neck, making the dragon seem almost alive. He looked up as she entered, and his entire demeanor shifted, shoulders relaxing, expression warming, the dangerous edge softening into something approaching peace. Mi amor, he greeted, standing to meet her. Thank you for coming. Victor made it sound important. She accepted his kiss, brief but claiming. What's going on? Fernando gestured to the sitting area by the windows, where a portfolio lay on the coffee table. I have a proposal. Sit. Intrigued. Lillian settled onto the leather sofa, while Fernando poured them both wine, a ritual they'd developed over months of late-night conversations about business, life, and the future they were building together. I'm expanding, Fernando began, sitting beside her close enough that their thighs touched. 3 new restaurant concepts, all high-end, all in prime locations. I want you to oversee the entire hospitality division, not just Celestial everything. Lillian's breath caught. Fernando, that's a multi-million-dollar operation. I've only been managing Celestial for a few months, and you've exceeded every projection I had. He opened the portfolio, revealing architectural renderings, financial projections, market analyses. You have instincts for this that can't be taught. You understand people, anticipate their needs, create experiences that make them feel special. That's worth more than an MBA or decades of experience. She studied the proposals, her mind already racing with possibilities. A modern izakaya, a Mediterranean concept, an experimental tasting menu restaurant that would push culinary boundaries. Each one was ambitious, risky, and absolutely thrilling. This is a huge responsibility, she said carefully. If I fail, you won't. Fernando's certainty was absolute. But even if something doesn't work, we learn and adapt. I'm not offering you this as a gift, Lillian. I'm offering it as an investment. You've earned this. She looked up from the portfolio to meet his eyes, seeing nothing but faith and pride reflected there. Why? Why do you believe in me so much? Because you've already proven what you're capable of. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. You survived abuse. You rebuilt yourself. You stood in a warehouse facing armed men and fought back. You chose to stay in my world knowing the danger, and you've thrived despite it. His thumb traced circles on her palm. If you can do all that, you can build an empire. And I want to watch you do it. Emotion tightened Lillian's throat. I love you, she said, the words coming easier now after months of saying them. I love you for seeing me as more than what I was. I love you for becoming more than anyone expected. Fernando pulled her into his lap, arms wrapping around her waist. You're not my employee or my rescued damsel, Lillian. You're my partner, my equal, the woman who makes me want to build something lasting instead of just ruling through fear. She kissed him, deep and claiming, pouring everything she felt into the connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she made her decision. I'll do it, she said. But on one condition. Fernando's eyebrow arched. You're negotiating with me? Always. She grinned. I want a foundation. Something that helps women escaping domestic violence housing, job training, legal support. Everything I wish I'd had when I was with Caleb. The restaurants can fund it. I'll run both. Pride blazed in Fernando's expression. Done. I'll have my lawyers draft the paperwork. Just like that? Just like that. He kissed her forehead. You want to save people the way I couldn't save you soon enough. How could I say no to that? Lillian's eyes stung with grateful tears. You did save me. That night, that text, you saved my life, Fernando. No, mi amor. His voice was rough with emotion. You saved yourself. You just gave me the honor of being there when you did. That evening, Lillian stood in the Foundation's future location, an empty building Fernando had purchased outright, ready to be transformed into a shelter and resource center. Victor had driven her, standing quietly in the doorway while she explored the space, imagining what it could become. Beds for women fleeing danger, counselors to help them heal, job training to help them build independence. A place she wished had existed when she needed it most. You're going to help a lot of people, Victor said quietly. Boss is proud of you. We all are. Lillian turned to face him. This gentle giant who'd taught her to fight and protected her like family. Thank you, Victor. For everything. The training, the protection, the terrible jokes that made me laugh when I wanted to cry. He shuffled, uncomfortable with praise. Just doing my job, Miss Jones. No. You went beyond duty. She crossed to him, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. You treated me like I mattered when I didn't believe I did. I won't forget that. Victor's expression softened. You've always mattered. From that first night when Boss carried you out of that apartment like you were made of glass, we all knew you were special. Knew you'd change everything. Did I? Lillian asked, genuinely curious. Changed him, definitely. Victor smiled. Man used to be ice. Now he's fire, burns for you, protects you, builds for you. It's something else to see. As they left the building, Lillian's phone buzzed with a text from Fernando. Dinner at home tonight? I'm cooking. She smiled, typing back. You don't cook. I'm learning. For you. Her heart swelled impossibly full. This dangerous, powerful man who ruled the city's underworld was learning to cook because he wanted to share simple moments with her. I'll be there soon, she replied. I love you. I love you more. Hurry home. Home. Not the penthouse or his house in the hills, but wherever they were together. Lillian Jones, former waitress, domestic violence survivor, wrong number miracle had finally found where she belonged, and she'd become fire instead of ash getting there. 3 months later, the city knew her name. Not as Fernando Bonaparte's woman, though she was that, fiercely and publicly, but as Lillian Jones, the hospitality mogul who'd launched 3 acclaimed restaurants and a foundation that was already changing lives. The press called her a Cinderella story. They didn't know the half of it. Tonight, Lillian stood in front of her bathroom mirror in Fernando's hilltop home, adjusting the midnight blue dress he'd had made for her. Diamonds glittered at her throat, a gift for their 6-month anniversary, and her hair fell in waves down her back, elegant and confident. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Gone were the haunted eyes and defensive posture. In their place stood someone who'd learned to walk through the world without apologizing for taking up space. You look like a queen, Fernando said from the doorway, devastating in a black tuxedo that emphasized every dangerous line of his body. My queen. Flattery will get you everywhere, Lillian teased, turning to face him. Where are we going anyway? You've been cryptic all week. You'll see. He offered his arm, eyes warm with affection and something else, nervousness. Impossible. Fernando Bonaparte didn't get nervous. Victor drove them through the city as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. They passed Celestial, where Lillian's staff was handling the dinner rush with practiced excellence. Past the Foundation's headquarters, where the lights burned bright as volunteers worked late preparing for tomorrow's intake appointments. Her empire, built from ashes and determination. The car climbed into the hills, winding through exclusive neighborhoods until they reached a familiar destination. The rooftop restaurant where they'd had their first official date, back when everything between them was new and uncertain. Except tonight, the restaurant was empty. No other guests, no staff visible. Just candlelight and a single table set for 2, overlooking the city lights, spread below like a carpet of stars. Fernando, Lillian breathed, taking in the scene. What is this? This, he said, leading her to the table, is me being selfish, wanting you all to myself on a night that matters. They ate slowly, savoring food that somehow tasted better in the intimacy of this private moment. They talked about everything and nothing: the Foundation's first success story, the new restaurant's opening night chaos, Victor's terrible attempt at online dating that had them both laughing until they cried. It felt normal. Beautifully. Impossibly normal, despite the violence and danger that lurked in the shadows of their world. After dinner, Fernando stood, offering his hand. Come with me. He led her to the rooftop's edge, where the city sprawled beneath them, his city, the empire he'd built through blood and brilliance. The place he'd ruled alone until a desperate text message had changed everything. 6 months ago, Fernando began, his voice carrying an unusual vulnerability. You sent a message meant for your mother to a complete stranger. You were terrified, broken, bleeding. You asked for help. Lillian's throat tightened with memory. And you came. I came, he agreed, turning to face her fully. Because something in those words and that desperate plea reached through every wall I'd built around myself. I didn't know you, didn't owe you anything. But I came anyway. He took her hands, and she felt them trembling slightly. In that moment, you saved me as much as I saved you. You gave me purpose beyond power, a reason to be more than the monster people whispered about. You made me want to be worthy of the faith you placed in a wrong number stranger. Fernando, her voice cracked, tears already threatening. Wait, let me finish. He released one hand to reach into his jacket pocket. I've ruled this city for a decade. I've commanded armies, built empires, and made men tremble with a word. But I've never felt powerful, Lillian. Not truly. Not until you looked at me, all of me, including the darkness, and chose to stay. He dropped to one knee, and Lillian's heart stopped. The box he opened held a ring that took her breath, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds, catching the candlelight like captured starfire. You texted me for rescue, Fernando said, voice rough with emotion. But you rescued me too. From loneliness I didn't know I felt. From a life without meaning beyond control and fear. From believing I was nothing but violence. Tears streamed down Lillian's face as he continued. I don't deserve you. A smarter man would let you go, let you build a life free from the danger that comes with my world. But I'm not smart when it comes to you. I'm selfish and desperate, and completely irrevocably in love. His pale eyes blazed with absolute certainty. Marry me, Lillian Jones. Be my wife, my partner, my reason for everything. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that wrong number was actually fate, giving us both exactly what we needed. Yes. The word burst from her before he'd finished, joy and love and certainty flooding through her. Yes, Fernando. Always yes. He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like salt from her tears and promise and forever. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Lillian held up her hand, watching the ring catch the light. It's perfect, she whispered. Like you. Fernando cupped her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. Like us. We're not perfect, Lillian corrected, thinking of all the broken pieces that had brought them together. We're scarred and dangerous and probably a little bit insane. Exactly. His smile was pure wicked satisfaction. Perfect for each other. She laughed, the sound bright and free in the night air. What happens now? Do we have a big wedding? Announce it to the world? Deal with your enemies who'll see me as an even bigger target? Now? Fernando pulled her closer, until they were swaying together to music only they could hear. Now we do whatever we want. Big wedding or courthouse, public or private, I don't care. As long as you're mine by the end of it. I'm already yours, Lillian reminded him. Have been since you kicked down my bathroom door. Then let's make it official. Next week, next month, tomorrow. You choose. She considered, thinking of how far they'd both come. 3 months, she decided. Give me time to plan something that represents us both the light and the dark. Fernando's expression softened with pride. A queen who knows what she wants. God, I love you. I love you too. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong and hers. Even when your world is dangerous, even when your enemies send threats, even when loving you means walking through fire, I'll burn anyone who tries to hurt you, Fernando vowed against her hair. We'll raze cities. We'll destroy anyone and everyone who threatens what we have. You know that, right? I know. And she did. Had seen firsthand the lengths he'd go to, the violence he was capable of in her name. And I'd do the same for you. We're equals in this, Fernando. Partners, he agreed. King and queen of this beautiful, broken empire. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other and the city lights, both marveling at how a wrong number had become so perfectly right. Later that night, back at home, Lillian stood at the bedroom window watching dawn approach. Fernando slept behind her, finally at peace after making love with a tenderness that had left them both shaking. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother they'd reconciled months ago, after Lillian had finally found the courage to explain everything. Can't wait to meet him properly, Mija. Love you. Lillian smiled, typing back. He's one of the good ones, Mom. In his own way. Not conventionally good, no. Fernando would never be that. He was violence and power, danger and control. But he was also loyalty and protection, fierce devotion and unexpected gentleness. He was hers. She looked at the sapphire on her finger, then at the sleeping man who'd given it to her. This dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who'd answered a desperate text and changed both their lives forever. Let anyone try again, Lillian whispered to the empty room. To the city beyond, to any enemy foolish enough to test them. Let them try to take what we've built. Let them come. Behind her, Fernando stirred, reaching for her even in sleep. She returned to bed, fitting herself against him, and felt his arms wrap around her with instinctive possessiveness. Love you, he mumbled, still dreaming. Love you more, she whispered back. As dawn broke over the city, they ruled together. Lillian Jones, soon to be Lillian Bonaparte, finally understood what she'd found that desperate night when she'd texted the wrong number. Not just rescue, not just protection, but partnership with someone equally broken and equally fierce. Someone who'd seen her at her weakest and recognized strength. Someone who'd given her not just safety, but the courage to become dangerous in her own right. They'd both been saved by that wrong number, and neither would ever be helpless again. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were home. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.